I'm 28 years old, and recently I was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer called cholangiocarcinoma. My name is Kay, and my goal in creating this video is to share my story and maybe potentially help others in the future. Before I was diagnosed, I was misdiagnosed by 2 other doctors. My symptoms started about a couple months ago. I would say back in October. I was working out and I hurt the left side of my abdomen. It was the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. I went straight to an emergency urgent care clinic that's connected with the hospital. From there, they did a CT scan with contrast. In the CT scan, it showed that I sprained my left oblique, but then it also showed a liver mass that was found incidentally. The ER emergency doctor there told me, don't worry, it's not cancer, just follow up with a gastroenterologist. I obviously was freaking out at this point, so within a couple of days, I made an appointment to follow up with a gastroenterologist. She ran a whole bunch of blood work, labs, everything, and everything came back within normal limits, so everything was normal. She told me, don't worry, I don't believe you have cancer, and she also ran a tumor marker, and that tumor marker came back negative. The only weird thing about my labs was that I had elevated liver enzymes, but they weren't elevated enough to the point where she was super concerned. She wanted to know what this liver mass was. She said it was a liver hemangioma based upon the CT scannings from the emergency urgent care visit, but she wanted to run her own tests, so she ordered an MRI. I did the MRI, and the MRI came back again as a liver hemangioma. Again, she told me, don't worry, you don't have cancer, it's nothing to worry about. At this point, my mind was at ease because I was like, okay, I don't have cancer, I don't have anything to worry about. From what she told me, a liver hemangioma is just a really benign tumor. She still wanted to know why my liver enzymes were elevated, and I did have a D-dimer elevation as well when she ran my lab, which usually means that you have a blood clot or something somewhere. She was concerned about that, so then she ordered me to do an MRA screening, and I guess that tests for blood clots. That scan came back showing that maybe the liver hemangioma metastasized. While I was at work, I was doing a lot of heavy lifting. Also was at the gym a day prior before that. While I was at work, I noticed I had a really sharp pain on the right side of my abdomen, which was a really weird pain for me. I've never had that pain before. And so I was like, okay, let me just sit down and see if this pain goes away. I sat down and the pain just kept getting excruciating worse, and it was the worst pain I've ever felt. At this point, I thought I was having appendicitis. I went to my manager, and my manager said, okay, we both agreed that I should just go to the emergency room. I went to the emergency room, and in the emergency room, I told them about my previous scans and how it showed that I had a liver hemangioma. The emergency room doctors, because my scans showed a liver hemangioma, they told me that a gastroenterologist would be consulted and an oncologist would be consulted for the scans. I did do 2 sets of scans in the emergency room. I did the gastroenterologist scans, and then the oncologist scan had a different protocol because they wanted to time the scans differently. When the scans came back, the oncologist told me that I did have cancer and that most likely it looked like cancer and that I would have to be going into emergency surgery. The next day, I went into emergency surgery and they did a whole bunch of biopsies in my entire abdomen just to go ahead and see what kind of cancer this was. The oncologist did run a whole bunch of other labs that showed back that all of my cancer markers came back elevated. At this point, we knew I had cancer, we just didn't know what kind of cancer it was. The oncologist was very concerned about this type of cancer because in the scans, it showed that it did spread, and they were waiting for the biopsy results to come back to determine what my actual cancer diagnosis was going to be. They then told me that I would have to go in for a port placement, so within a couple of days, I went and I got my port placed. The next week, I was scheduled for chemotherapy even though we didn't have my actual cancer diagnosis yet. They just wanted me in the schedules just so I could go ahead and begin chemotherapy. A couple of days before I started chemotherapy, my diagnosis came back as stage 4 cholangiocarcinoma, which is cancer of the bile ducts. It did spread primarily to my liver, which was that liver mass. It's frustrating because I did have 2 doctors tell me not to worry and that I did not have cancer. Upon talking to my oncologist, I asked why didn't I have any symptoms before this. I was working out, I was living a very, very healthy lifestyle. This cancer is primarily found in the elderly population, and I am only 28 years old. Looking back now, I have recognized that I did have some symptoms that I didn't realize were cancer symptoms at the time. Symptoms that I had that I didn't realize that I had were I was having very, very bad hot flashes at night, to the point where I would have to switch out of my PJs and switch into a whole different pair of PJs just because I was sweating so much. I would get dizzy throughout the day. That's not normal for me. When I would get dizzy, I would crave sugar. So I would immediately have to go for a Gatorade or a peanut butter just to not feel dizzy. I also would get very fatigued throughout the day. Normally, I wouldn't have to take a nap, but some days I would feel like I would have to take a nap. I also would get extremely nauseous to the point where I would be dry heaving and just felt very uncomfortable. And again, these symptoms I would take with a grain of salt because it doesn't mean that you have cancer, but I would suggest that you go ahead and get yourself checked out by a doctor. Like I said, my goal in creating this video is to continue sharing my journey and answer any questions you guys may have. I have started chemotherapy. If y'all have any questions about chemotherapy, I would be happy to answer them too.